afternoon. This is the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners for Tuesday, September 11, 2018. I'm Commissioner Bud Blake, Chair of the Board this year. I'd like to start off by doing a few introductions. To my left is Commissioner Gary Edwards. To my right is Commissioner John Hutchings. To his right is Labanita Beaumar, Clerk of the Board. To her right is Assistant County Manager and Budget Officer Robin Campbell. With that in mind, I'll ask Commissioner Hutchings to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. It's my honor to ask Under Sheriff Tim Braniff to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Fellow guests, please join me in the salute to our flag.
I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you,
Tim.
Under Sheriff.
Thank you.
With that in mind, I'll ask if there's a motion to approve today's agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the Tuesday, September 11, 2018 agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded as stated. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and so that motion carries. And the board meeting minutes for September 4th, 2018.
I move to accept the board meeting minutes from September 4th, 2018.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the board meeting minutes for September 4th, 2018. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and that motion carries as well. Well, today we have an exciting lineup of three presentations. And the first one is a proclamation of the National Day of Service of Remembrance. And we have Robin Campbell to kind of frame it, and then we're going to have a proclamation, have a few guests to come speak, and I think that's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you, Commissioner. Today, as everyone's aware, is the 17th anniversary of the planes flying into the Twin Towers and the Pentagon landing in a field in Pennsylvania.
That's exactly right.
And the service that our police officers and firefighters showed at that time were heroic and an important event for us to mark and remember. And so I'm going to ask Kurt Harden if he could come up and please say a few words and tell us who's here with us today.
Hello, Kurt. If you just introduce yourself and what department you have. And
Good afternoon, Commissioners. My name is Kurt Harden. I'm the Director of Thurston County Emergency Services. And I want to echo what Robin was just saying. You know, today, 17 years ago today changed our world as we know it. I think everybody who is old enough to remember that event knew what they were doing, when they were doing it, and how it impacted them and affected them. So I can remember that for myself personally, I remember that I was getting ready for work. It was just before 6 in the morning, and I thought, wow, what a tragic accident for one plane to go into a tower. And then when you saw the second plane, and then you heard about the Pentagon, and then you realized that that was a day that, and then Flight 93 in Pennsylvania, that was a day that changed our lives forever. For those of us in the military, it changed our life overnight. And so for law enforcement, for fire, it changed their lives too, because it became I heard this morning as one of the, as I was doing remembrances, there was a firefighter in New York who had shift change had taken place. He was headed home. The plane went in. He turned around, went back to his fire station, and his fire station was empty because everybody had deployed. Everybody got dispatched. So he grabbed his gear. He went to try to find them. He got caught in a traffic jam, and then he put his gear on and ran all the way down to the site and went in and linked up with his squad, went inside the South Tower, and never came back. So, stories like that are just numerous out there. And so I would say that this is one of those situations where we all can remember, and it will all be emblazoned in our memory for the rest of our lives. And so I would like to, take an opportunity to, I'm going to let Sheriff Snaza speak for law enforcement and Chief Brooks speak for the fire service, but from my perspective, being from emergency services, emergency management, and also from the military, to thank everybody out there who have served and continue to serve or will serve, because our country is founded on that, service and first responders and service to our community. So with that, I would like to ask Sheriff Snaza to come up and speak just a little bit about law enforcement, and then after that, Chief Brooks.
Thank you, Kurt and commissioners. As I not only look at the county commissioners and I look into the audience, I see at least 2 county commissioners who were in law enforcement at that time, and I also see a lieutenant colonel up there who was involved when this occurred. And when I look out in the audience and I see not only law enforcement, but veterans and fire personnel, emergency responders, and a lot of the people in this, how deeply moved they are about the events that occurred, because not only did it occur on the East Coast, but it occurred in the United States, an attack on the United States. And as far as a law enforcement perspective, how we looked at it is that we were all being attacked. All the citizens in the state of Washington, Thurston County, were being attacked. And it was our job to protect our citizens. And I can't tell you how many people were willing to step up for Commissioner Edwards and volunteer to stay after work, to stay after on the weekends, to stay on whatever it took to protect life and property for the citizens of Thurston County, and who wanted to go to the East Coast to serve the citizens of the state of Washington and of the East Coast, and how he had to make sure we all stayed here to protect the citizens. And so for that, I feel very grateful that we were able to at least be here. And not only as a veteran, but now as a law enforcement officer, how proud I am of all the emergency responders that were involved in the event that occurred not only 17 years ago, but it was on a Tuesday morning. And it was about 8 something in the morning on the East Coast time, and we're just waking up, kind of like what Kurt said, just getting ready to go to work, and you're seeing all these bad things happen, and what do we do with our children? And how worried were we for them? And so I can tell you that how honored I am to be part of the law enforcement community and the emergency responders, set aside with the firefighters, to be there for them as well. So thank you for giving me the opportunity.
You bet. Thank you, Sheriff. Chief Brooks.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Steve Brooks, the Fire Chief at Lacey Fire District 3 and President of the Thurston County Fire Chiefs Association, and I just want to echo some of the Sheriff's comments and say what an honor it is to be here today among such a distinguished group of guests, and to also personally acknowledge and say thank you to the Commissioners for your long legacy of service as well. And on behalf of the entire fire and EMS community, thank you for this opportunity to pause and reflect on those events. And in some ways, it's very hard for me to believe it's been 17 years. It seems much shorter in some ways, and yet the impacts seem so far-reaching that in many ways longer. It was interesting as I was thinking about it this morning, I heard some updated statistics. I think it's also important that we remember that those events and the impacts were not isolated just to that time and the even months that surrounded, but the latest numbers we know of now is that 343 firefighters that were lost that day is now in excess of 500, just because of the related cancers and other injuries that were sustained by those who, caring nothing about their own personal health and safety, rushed to that pile to search and perform rescue and recovery missions for the days and even months that followed. And so not only do we want to remember those who were lost on that day, but those who both personally and the families of those who continue to feel the effects of that even today. So again, thank you for this opportunity, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Thank you for your kind words, Chief. Yeah.
And I would just like to finish up with a note to the families and friends of all the first responders out there, because it takes, when you're a first responder and when you're rushing out and you're dispatched and you're going to a call, your family's behind you and they're wanting you to come back safe. And every time we get called out or they get called out, it's the family who provides that support. And when they have a tough time out on a call or a dispatch or something that's happened on 9/11, it's the family who brings them back and supports them. So I wanted to also say a big thank you to all the families out there who support first responders as well. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you, Kurt. Anybody else? Chief Purcell? No? Okay. You have a comment, a question?
Nope, I just think it's proper that we recognize this day, because this day is going to be in history for many, many, many years to come. and it's changed our lives. And maybe not necessarily for the better, but because we had a lot of challenges that came along with it. But I think we're a strong country and we'll overcome. And I do think things are getting better every day.
Very good. You, sir?
I was a graveyard supervisor back then, and in retrospect, it just seems we were so naive prior to September 11th. And so when dispatch notified us that the first plane had gone into the towers, I thought, wow, that's kind of weird. But when they said that they turned on the news, we saw the second one, that's not weird. Yeah, that's not a coincidence either. Called all the officers in. They watched for a few minutes, and I said, get out there. We don't know what it is, but get out and protect our infrastructure. Go out and cruise, eyeball anything and everything, light it up. Just, we don't know what's going on. I called home and told my wife, get up, turn on the TV, and wake up the 8 and 10-year-old, our son and daughter. They were 8 and 10, because this is a moment to remember now. And but like you said, it just doesn't seem like it's been 17 years. It seems like it's a much shorter period, Chief, much shorter period of time. But I don't think we're naive anymore, and I don't want to be proven wrong. So I thank everybody that's been involved throughout the country.
Yeah, I would like to echo those words that have been already said and the sentiments. I did 2 tours in Iraq and 2 tours in Afghanistan, 48 months. And I'll tell you what's even better is when you come home and you retire, you see the best law enforcement, fire, and medical response, first responders here at home, taking care of those families, because families do matter. And we're a family of Thurston County as a whole, individually, and it just really makes you feel good about where you're going in life and just taking care of each other. And so thank you very much for your hard work and your hard service. And we'll keep on taking care of each other. So with that in mind, I'll ask him to read the proclamation and do a photo. And then if you don't mind, we'll do 10 seconds or 15 seconds of a word of silence and before we leave out of here.
In recognition of September 11th, National Day of Service and Remembrance, whereas on September 11, 2001, the American people endured the worst terrorist attack on U.S. soil in the nation's history with courage and heroism, and whereas in response to this tragedy, Americans across the country came together in remarkable spirit of patriotism and unity and carried out countless acts of kindness, generosity, and compassion, whereas community organizations and family members of the victims of the attack began observing the anniversary of September 11th as a charitable service day to honor the memory of those who were lost and those who united in response to the tragedy, including first responders and volunteers. And whereas the Serve America Act, approved by Congress and enacted into law on April 21, 2009, directed September 11th to be observed and recognized as an annual National Day of Service and Remembrance, and charged the Corporation for National and Community Service with leading this nationwide effort. And whereas September 11, National Day of Service and Remembrance activities are being organized by a variety of nonprofits, faith-based and community groups, public agencies, educational institutions, private businesses, and other organizations across the nation. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Thurston County Commissioners hereby proclaims September 11th as a day of service and remembrance in Thurston County, and calls upon the people of Thurston County to honor the lives of those lost through participation in community service and remembrance ceremonies on this day and throughout the year. Adopted this 11th day of September 2018, signed by your county commissioners.
Chief, Sheriff, anybody in uniform, family member, anybody who wants to come on up,
You
get a
don't
photo.
have to be in uniform. We're military guys. Get up here too.
Military, yep. No, I'll call you out.
Come on.
Come on.
So this one is yours. Here you go. This is yours. This is yours. Come on, Carla. You want us to scrunch together? Oh my God. We got that double row. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Can you get everybody?
Ready? 1, 2, 3, 1.
1, 2, 3. There you go. All right. Thank you very much. All right.
Thank you, and thank you for your service, fellas.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. All right.
My pleasure.
So before you leave, just 1
Good
second.
to see you, buddy.
Good, Chief.
Fine.
Thanks.
All right. Just give me about 10 seconds to do bow your heads and do a moment of silence for those in memory of that lost their lives and perished and gave the ultimate sacrifice. All righty. Thank you again, gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen out there serving in uniform, it's great to have you here in memory. And I don't want to wish you luck because I want you to be prepared. So,
Be safe out there.
yeah, exactly. Okay, so we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. If I can find my agenda. There we go. So the next item we have on the agenda is a presentation from the Thurston County Historical Journal. And I think we have Karen Johnson. Is she here? Yeah, Karen. How you doing? So it's a great moment to be able to capture a little bit of history and tell us a different side of Thurston County,
different side indeed. I'm Karen Johnson. I'm the curator at the Schmidt House, owned and operated by the Olympia Tumwater Foundation. And I'm going to tell you a story.
Sure, just speak into the mic a little bit more.
Okay, July 1912.
Okay, good.
It was a hot month, like this July. The U.S. Army is busy holding war games at several locations around the country, including right here in Thurston County. Over 4,500 soldiers came from around the Northwest to engage in these war games. The invaders are called the Reds, and they're entering Thurston County from the Grays Harbor area. The defenders, or the Blues, are going to protect Puget Sound. The two forces plan to engage each other right between Gate and Little Rock, of all places. The Blues are composed of National Guard units from Idaho and Washington. The Reds are made up of National Guard units from Oregon and Idaho, and a very special group from Spokane, the fort there at Spokane, the 25th Infantry. Are you familiar with the 25th Infantry back in the turn of the century?
Not that far back, but I'm familiar with them.
They were called, or also known as, the Buffalo Soldiers. You may have heard of them, which was a group of African Americans that started as a formation of troops back just after the Civil War. And they were tasked with protecting the West, the expansion westward on the Great Plains. They protected the settlers against the Native Americans. They captured cattle rustlers and thieves. They protected settlers and stagecoaches and wagon trains and railroad crews in the American West. Now, no one knows exactly why they were called Buffalo Soldiers, but that was the nickname given to them by the Native Americans on the plains, in the prairies. It may be because they were African Americans. Maybe their dark, curly hair generally reminded the African or the Native Americans of buffalo. Maybe it's because they were such valiant and brave fighters that they were reminded of the sturdiness and how strong and brave the buffalo were when they were attacked. But at any rate, that nation, or that nickname stuck. After the West was won, so to speak, the Buffalo Soldiers still existed as a troop of soldiers. They fought forest fires in our national parks and across the West. They served as rangers in our national parks. And they also served in the Indian Wars and the Spanish-American War. They went on later from that, too, and served in other wars. But to return to Thurston County. So here we are in July of 1912, and there's a war game going on. Brigadier General Marion Moss has come out from Washington, D.C. to observe and oversee the war games. So on July 20th, the Reds, the invaders, which includes the Buffalo Soldiers, land at Grays Harbor, and they start making their way inland, eastward, toward Thurston County. Meanwhile, the Blues, or the defenders, are advancing northward from the Centralia-Chehalis area. The troops have to carry their own equipment, and the Army wanted this to be as like real combat duty as possible. So no frills here. The men had to carry their own gear, and they were given bacon and hardtack to survive on for the next few days. The Olympia and Seattle and Portland newspapers covered these war games in great detail. They had reporters out on site all the time, and people would drive out from town, just regular citizens would drive out from town in their carriages or possibly horseless carriages to observe these games. So they would take the high ground, as it were, and be able to overlook the plains around Gate in Little Rock. I want to quote you a few things that were written about the war exercises. Under cover of fog, the Blues left their camp at Gate at 6 o'clock yesterday morning and, led by the outpost of the 1st Cavalry and Troop B, went half a mile beyond the Black River Bridge, where the outpost of the Reds opened fire, retreating under its cover to their support. Realizing that the Black River Bridge would be protected, the Reds reconned in force and were met by the Blues on a similar mission. In the first encounter, the Blues were forced to retire to their bridge, which was mined with dynamite, so that it could be destroyed at the approach of the Reds today or during the night. The first major battle between the Reds and the Blues developed yesterday below the bridge across the Black River, when the Reds, the invading army, set out a recon force which met the Blues. After hours of fighting in which the boom of cannon planted on opposite hills and the crack of long army rifles blended with the rattle of the rapid-fire guns, the Blues still held the bridge, the strategic point. The Reds, well satisfied with having developed the Blues' position, then ceased active fighting and prepared for the big battle to begin this morning. Thursday night, Lieutenant Roscoe of the Reds penetrated the blue line, cut into the signal wire, learned much about the river line, slept in a haystack within a stone's throw of Colonel Young's tent, and succeeded in returning to his commander. The invaders sent powerful forces composed of the 25th Regulars and Oregon National Guard well into the Blue Country and took a position where they could pour down upon the unfortunate Blues a withering fire from both flanks as they attempted to reach Little Rock. With the 21st Regulars leading and the Washington National Guard bringing up the rear, the Blues marched into the trap set for them, and despite the fact that they put up a stubborn fight, they were helplessly routed by the unmerciful storm of lead poured upon them from apparently all directions. At 10 o'clock, the umpires decided that the defenders had been beaten and had been forced to surrender their colors. So these war games, although I haven't yet really corroborated this, showed that the Puget Sound cities, Olympia, Seattle, Tacoma, and Puget Sound itself and the manufacturing centers there could be attacked and won with land troops. Previous to that, everyone was centered on ships coming through Puget Sound and attacking our important port cities. But this proved that it could also be done by land. So this war game from 1912 may have played a part, not the whole game, but may have played a part in getting Fort Lewis established, because Fort Lewis was at an advantageous situation where troops from Fort Lewis could defend both by water and by land. So why is this important? It's history. We just learned so much about why history is important. We need to remember these things. They teach us things about ourselves. One of the things, ways that we can learn more about our local history here is through a publication that I'm involved with, Thurston County Historical Journal. And I think all of you commissioners have seen copies of that before. If not, I have some copies here, and there are some back on the table at the entry too. The Thurston County Historical Journal is a way to promote and celebrate and record our history so we don't forget important events like this. It can educate us, it can entertain us, it can amuse us, it can sadden us, but it makes us remember things. The Thurston County Historical Journal came about because some folks, notably Charlie Rowe, who was with the Olympia Historical Society, wanted some official, more or less, official publication to celebrate our history. Thurston County is one of the few counties in the state that does not have a brick and mortar county museum. We used to, because we had the State Capitol Museum, and that's what we thought of as the Thurston County Museum. But when that museum went away, we lost a brick and mortar presence about our history, even though many smaller historical societies in the county do have brick and mortar museums. But we also didn't have an official publication that celebrated our history. So Charlie Rowe and others at Olympia Historical Society decided that at least we could get some kind of a journal going, some kind of a publication that would come out several times a year and would celebrate our stories, give historians and archivists a place to publish things that they've learned, and educate our citizens. The journal, unlike some other publications, is semi-scholarly. We have an editor, that's me, and we have an editorial committee who proofread and fact-check and edit all the submissions because we want the stories that we're telling in the journal to be as factual as possible. There's too much misinformation out there about history in general, about our history. If you've ever heard of George Washington Bush, you're wrong. It's just George Bush, no Washington, thank you. But it's that kind of thing that's so engraved in our public memory that we will probably never fix that, but it was just George Bush. But we want our stories to be factual so that as this journal continues and as these stories go online or are seen in hard copy, that people learn the real history. The real history, to me, is interesting enough. I don't think we need to embroider it or embellish it. We just need to tell the real stories out there about people and events and places in our county. The first issue debuted in November 2016, and we just brought out our 6th issue last month. So we've been operating for almost 2 years now, and we're funded by different entities in the county. The Thurston County itself has given us money, as has cities of Olympia and Lacey and Tumwater, either financial help or in-kind help. And we've also gotten a good deal of funding from individuals and from almost every historical organization in the county. So it's a well-supported journal. It's currently formatted, edited, and published by the Olympia Tumwater Foundation. And we, as I mentioned before, we also have an editorial committee made up of 4 people who help select and edit articles for publication. 1 year after the paper copy comes out, we have been putting these the issues online at the City of Lacey website. So even if you don't manage to get a paper copy, you can go to the City of Lacey website and read them online. Tomorrow we're going to make a presentation to the County Historical Commission and hope to gain their help in making this a true county publication underneath the umbrella of the Thurston County Historic Commission. Why is history important? That's a question I get asked every once in a while, and I have a hard time coming up with a good answer. But for you here, I'll just look at you commissioners for the moment. Why are you important? Do you think what you do here is important? Are you making history? Are you part of history? I think you are. 20 years from now or 50 years from now, somebody's going to look back at what you 3 are doing today, what all of us are doing today, here speaking about important issues like taxes, homelessness, other social issues of the day. This is becoming history. We're making history as we talk here today. So that is to me, very important. It's going to be interesting to people in the future. History gives us, it tells us where we've been so we can decide where we're going. It instructs us, it teaches us, it gives us a structure or a foundation from where we can learn about things and make better decisions in the future. What worked before? What didn't work before? Can we take this idea or this event or this chain of events and improve on it? Or do we need to scrap it all together and start over from scratch? If we don't have that kind of foundation, we have a difficult time and we end up spinning our wheels or reinventing the wheel a lot as a society, as a culture. What else can history teach us? It gives us a sense of pride in our own community and our county. From a mercenary standpoint, it might bring in tourist dollars. We all like tourist dollars, don't we? To me, the most important things are it teaches us about other people and other places, other cultures, other times, so that we can be more sympathetic to those around us. We can understand those more around us. And in this multicultural, multi-ethnic world that we live in now that's getting smaller and smaller, we need to be sympathetic to other people and the way they look at things and the way they think about things. Most of all, important to me, it teaches us, to me, one of the most beautiful words in the English language, which is home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Comments or questions?
I can tell you're enthused, and that's great. That is super. So keep up the good work and keep us informed, and I think we want to continue to help when we can.
Great, thank you.
You mentioned that we don't know where we're going unless you've seen where you've been. And the same adage, people say, I'm going to look forward, I'm not going to look backwards, but we don't know who we are so you see where you have been or who you were. But having said that, it's on Lacey's website, but is it on the manual or the journal on the county's website?
Not yet, but we would like to put it there. And there are other historical organizations that have a link on their website to Lacey. Lacey is just posting it or hosting it.
All right, cool. Thank you very much.
It's in discussion, though, as far as getting it on the Thurston.
Yeah.
And when I get copies of the journal, I hand them out. I think it's a brilliant piece of
Great.
work.
And there are a few back there, but if anybody from the audience wants some, I do have some extra here.
Beautiful. Thank you very
Okay,
much.
thank you so much for having me.
I got me. So there's a whole wealth of history, and I know that's kind of no duh that's saying, but Native American basket weaving to Charles Lindbergh, the Nisqually Valley Pioneers, Courtney Love's house. I'm always interested in how she got here. The Carnegie Medal winners, the Thurston County oil strike, and obviously the Olympia Cannery. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Thank you so much for what you do.
There's no shortage of history out there.
I know, it's fun, and to see exactly the changes and kind of predict when you're reading this history where you think you might wind up, at least in terms of new technologies and new social issues, new peoples and that kind of stuff in 20, 30, 40 years, and it's kind of fun. So thank you again.
Okay,
and,
thank you.
Come on back, yeah. Okay, so the next presentation we have is very cool in the sense of timeliness. And so it's a proclamation for Attendance Awareness Month. And I'll turn it over to Robin to introduce our guests. And so take it from there, Robin.
Okay, as our children head back to school here in November. I must be thinking budget timeline.
Yeah, you are.
So here we are in September, and our kids are going back to school. And so this is Attendance Awareness Month. And here to accept a proclamation that the board will give is we have Terry Pablo, the Career and Technical Education Director and Communications Director for Yelm Community Schools, and Karina Duasher, Assistant Director of Special Services and Safety. And I would invite them to please come up to the podium.
Terry. And
It's Terry and Karina?
Karina,
Terry? Okay, thank you.
And
Good afternoon.
hello, Terry.
Afternoon.
I'm Terry, this is Karina, and on behalf of Superintendent Brian Wharton, we're really pleased to be here and share with you some of the work that we're doing around attendance. And as Robin said, it is a September's National Attendance Awareness Month, and we've joined in a campaign in Yelm, along with probably many other school districts around the nation, to improve attendance for students and really to share what the impacts of chronic absenteeism is. Superintendent Wharton shared earlier today that studies have shown that if students miss 10 absences a year, it's considered chronic. And if you miss 10 absences a year for the many years that you're in school, you've almost missed an entire year's worth of schooling. So if you think about it, if you attend school for 13 years, but you've been absent for a year of it, are you going to be ready to be college and career ready, to enter the workforce, to continue your education? And so it's really important for us to educate parents and community of attending all day, every day, and being engaged in education while you're there. So we appreciate you recognizing this as being September Awareness Month, and join us in sharing that with all of our community. Karina, do you have anything to add? Thank you.
Okay, sure. Any comments or questions?
Well, they've all heard me say this before. Kids are, 30% of our population, but 100% of our future. And we should always be striving to do the best we can with our young people.
When I read this proclamation this morning, I had a twinge of guilt. And that is because when our kids were growing up, my son's birthday is around Christmas, so they were always out of school. But my daughter's birthday is February 7th. So I would always take her out of school on her birthday, and we would just go do whatever we would do. And my wife would balk at that. Don't take Janet out of school. And I said, what do you learn in one day of school? In one day, what do you learn? But cumulatively, so I read this, and I thought, well, I'm going to make sure my wife doesn't watch this now, because I'm going to read this proclamation. You have any comments before I go?
Yeah. Attendance or punctuality or being on time is critically important to me in terms of being in business and being on time at work, and so I thank you for what you do with the kids. So yeah, you bet.
Message received.
Yes, there you go. Go ahead.
Attendance Awareness Month. Whereas we value and recognize that good school attendance is essential to student achievement and graduation, and whereas chronic absence, missing 10% or more of school for any reason, including excused and unexcused absences, or just 2 of 3 days a month, is a proven predictor of academic trouble and dropout rates. And whereas improving attendance and reducing chronic absence takes commitment, collaboration, and tailored approaches to negative effects of chronic absences while utilizing the strengths in each community. And whereas chronic absence impacts students in low-income communities and children of color if they don't have the resources to make up for the lost time in the classroom, and these students are more likely to face systemic barriers to getting to school, such as unreliable transportation, lack of access to health care, unstable or unaffordable housing. And whereas attendance gaps among groups of students often turn into achievement gaps that undermine student success. Chronic absence particularly exacerbates the achievement gap that separates students in low-income communities from their peers. And whereas schools and community partners can reach out more frequently to absent students to determine what barriers they face to attending school and what would help them attend more regularly. And whereas we are committed to dedicating our resources and attention to reducing chronic absenteeism rates, with a focus starting as early as pre-kindergarten, as chronic absence can be significantly reduced when schools, families, and communities work together to monitor and promote good attendance and address hurdles that keep children from getting to school. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Board of Thurston County Commissioners hereby proclaims that Thurston County will stand with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month, and hereby commits to focusing on reducing chronic absenteeism to give all children an equitable opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. Adopted this 11th day of September, 2018.
Yay. You're going to get a picture? Yeah, sure.
My daughter did graduate with a master's, okay? Just to say.
So she didn't miss a day? Come on.
Hey,
up.
can't get away from here, Terry. You gotta get back up here.
Yeah. You got Karina? Hold that in front of you. Just like that. And I'll go over here with it.
Stand next to me if you let me. Okay.
No. There you go.
Thank you.
Hey, Terry.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much. We love this stuff.
Good.
It's wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Pleasure to meet you, Karina.
I want to take this opportunity to say I think you educators are all underappreciated for all your commitment
Yeah.
to our young people.
And paid, too.
Very
Yeah.
much so.
Okay, so that brings us to the part of the agenda where it's the opportunity for the public to address the board. And Labanita's going to put the 3 minutes on the clock here that's on the wall, your right, my left. And so for those who've signed in, it's a first come, first serve. And when you come to the podium, I ask you to give your first and last name and generally where you're at, where you come from, where you live in the county. With that in mind, I have Mr. Is it Kavanaugh? Is it? I think he signed in thinking he was just signing for no. How about Christine Hartman?
Oh, she's gone too.
Yep, both of them go. So that we'll come back to that later. So we'll just move on to the next portion, which is the county manager's update. And I ask Robin if there's anything she has to put out.
No update at this time.
No updates at this time. Okay, so we'll move to item number 3, which is the consent item. We have consent items A through F, and I'll ask if there's a motion to approve consent items A through F.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve consent items A through F.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve consent items A through F. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and that motion carries. So that takes us to department items, and so item number 4 is central services. And Central Services, there's the amending of the 2018 capital outlay plan for law enforcement vehicle purchases. And we have Martin Casey, he's the Director of Central Services, to give us some background.
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Martin Casey, your Central Services Director, and with me in the audience is our Fleet Services Manager, Brian Hanks, if you have further questions. The county operates a professional fleet management program here in Central Services to buy, maintain, and replace heavy equipment and vehicles. Each year, the board approves what we call a capital outlay plan. It's a procurement plan for the vehicles and equipment that we'll buy in the coming year. Similarly, in 2018, you approved the plan that we're currently operating under. This year, we've already proposed a 2019 capital outlay plan that you'll be considering later in the budget process. And that plan includes 19 patrol vehicles that the Sheriff's Office wants to replace with Ford Explorers. On August 22nd, Ford Motor Company announced that the ordering cutoff date for the 2019 model year vehicles is now later this month, on September 21st. If we wait to order until 2019, we're going to see a price increase of 11%, which translates to almost a $120,000 cost impact. In order to avoid that, Central Services has conferred with the Sheriff's Office, and we're recommending now that the board accelerate the purchase of those 19 vehicles and amend the capital outlay plan to do those this year. In addition, I just want to point out we're also adding one other vehicle to the list. On August 28th, the sheriff's vehicle was involved in a collision and totaled, and so we're recommending we go ahead and replace that at this time as well. The total cost for the 20 vehicles would be just over $930,000. Fleet Services has already achieved enough savings in this year's procurement process and through refurbishments to buy all 20 of these vehicles without also needing to increase our expenditure authority. So what we're looking for today is the purchasing authority to use under our existing expenditure authority. With that, happy to answer any other questions.
Questions about the vehicles?
I guess I want to commend you and Brian for taking the initiative to try and save the taxpayers' money here in Thurston County.
Thank you.
But I would ask, is there any possibility besides sheriff vehicles that we have maybe some other vehicles that are going to be coming up for replacement that maybe we could make that expenditure now too and save that same 11%, assuming that we're going to get a Ford bid, for an example. I guess that we never know, but I take it you might be looking into the possibility that we might be able to save in other fleet areas as well?
So Fleet Services, and I'll invite Brian to come up, I'd just say at a high level, we're continually monitoring what's going on with the manufacturers and their purchasing and production cycles to identify these opportunities as they come up. This particular issue just affects the police patrol vehicles offered by the Ford Motor Company, but we are always attuned to if there's something coming down the pipeline from one of the other manufacturers, if there's going to be an opportunity to save money or better leverage that.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Martin.
Okay.
The police patrol vehicle is the only vehicle that was affected so far with the work cutoff date.
Well, maybe the roads department could drive a police car or something if it'd save us some money.
That might look a little odd with a...
More money?
Well, I'm suggesting maybe that they just spend it earlier and save money, that's all.
The savings is because if we have to wait to 2019, we'll have to order the 2020 model year.
Sure.
The difference is between the 2019 and 2020 model year, that 11% difference.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for the tour as well. That was good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, is there a motion?
Yes, I move to amend the 2018 capital outlay plan and authorize the Central Services Director to purchase an additional 20 2019 model year police pursuit vehicles.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded as stated. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and that motion carries, Martin.
Thank you for getting me the figure, too. I appreciate that.
Next, we have department is the Human Resources, and I have Katie Gerard here, and to tell us a little bit about the VEBA, otherwise known as the Voluntary Employees Beneficiary Association.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today. We're
Pull
here
the
to
mic up just a tad. There you go. Now you can go.
All right.
All right.
Katie Gerard, Human Resources Director, here to talk to you about our Voluntary Employee Benefits Association, new benefit that we'd like to offer to our county employees. So we are here asking that you approve the resolution to establish the plan. What it is actually a health benefit reimbursement account that would be set up for individual employees as they retire from county government. It's available not on an individual basis, but through a group voting process. And so we're in the process of doing educational seminars with our VIBA plan administrator to educate employees about the opportunity to participate in a VIBA plan. And then we'll be conducting votes as well as working with our labor partners to establish terms and agreements related to those that are covered by a collective bargaining agreement. So we're excited to be able to offer this new benefit to our employees and ask that you approve this resolution.
Any questions of Katie?
No, I want to thank Katie and Lauren for all their hard work when they're on our behalf, because I know you guys put in an exceptional amount of effort into all these endeavors that you take on. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, for our employees. Yep.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve the resolution amending Chapter 4 of the Thurston County Personnel Rules and Policies to adopt rules for the newly established Voluntary Employees Beneficiary Association, or VEBA, Post-Separation Health Care Reimbursement Plan, and to amend certain rules related to accrual and use of leave.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded as stated. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion carries. You have another one, it's B, and it's similar, but it's different. Can you tell us what the difference is and what's it all about?
Yeah, so actually the resolution you just read is actually for Part B, which is the changes to the rules and policies related to leave. And so because we are offering this as a new benefit, several of the rules need to change to allow for the cash out to apply to both those in the traditional and the alternative leave plan. And so that resolution really is, the first one should have been for the adoption of the plan, and then the second one is to update the rules and policies accordingly to be able to implement that plan.
Okay.
So I think there's just one, so that resolution you just read
Yes.
is for this Part B.
They're flipped,
And
right?
yeah,
They're
you
flipped.
flipped the resolution, so
Do
we
we
just
have to
need to make sure we
redo it?
read the other resolution adopting the plan.
Robert's Rules of Order. Do I have to reread? Do we have to redo everything
I'm
now?
going to do a commissioner, chair's prerogative and say
Okay.
no.
Okay. They're very much interrelated. You got to get the plan in place, and then you got to change the rules and policies to be able to implement the plan. And so it's
We're going to
the
back up
distinction
time in
between those
history
two.
and come forward, and
It's all good.
it's all good.
So,
That's right, you got it, Jim.
so we need another motion.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if anybody wasn't paying attention. Move to approve the resolution establishing a Voluntary Employees Beneficiary Association, VEBA, Post-Separation Health Care Reimbursement Plan to be administered by the Voluntary Employees Beneficiary Association Trust for public employees in the Northwest for eligible Thurston County employees.
Second.
Been moved and seconded as stated. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, and that motion carries properly.
Wonderful. Thank you
You
very
bet.
much.
Thank you, Katie.
So now we're at item number 6, which is Commissioners and County Managers items, and I'll ask my seatmates if there's anything they'd like to report on, any of the work sessions, any of the committees they sit on, or anything out in the public they'd like to make everybody aware of. You have the floor. And
Boy, we're
don't look
getting
at the clock.
right through this, aren't we? Huh?
Yeah.
I think that I'm just going to report on last week's activity, some yesterday, but water quality is a big issue in Thurston County and in the state. And that's taken up a fair amount of my time these past few days, water quality and salmon enhancement. Now, one of the things we're working on with the state is to create a salmon hatchery at one of the Tumwater Falls parks on the Deschutes River. That's going to enable a larger salmon run that in turn will benefit the orca. And when we get to water quality, I have been trying to figure out, and I would ask the viewing audience out there how much you might know about this issue, but the timber industry puts thousands of tons of nitrogen on our forests in the headwaters of all of our waterways. Not just the Deschutes River, that's just one single area, but throughout the Cascades. And you know, that wasn't, I'm told that that's beneficial to the depleted nitrogen capabilities of water from those headwaters. But yet we talk about nitrogen as being a problem in all of our freshwater activities downstream. I can't get that in my head, that that's a benefit. 100 years ago, we were growing trees in this country just fine without that process. I can tell you that I've watched this go on for the last 50 years with helicopter application of commercial nitrogen. It's generally referred to as urea 46, the most potent nitrogen you can put on. I can tell you it gets in the water. I have citizens that tell me they don't drink the water during these application periods or for quite some time afterwards. So I just want the public to know that that type of application is going on. It's regulated by Department of Ecology and Department of Natural Resources, but there seems to be no attention on that. And when we talk about the orca are starving because of less salmon, I can't help but see a direct correlation between pollution and our lack of salmon return to our streams and tributaries that we're spending a lot of money on trying to enhance. So I just bring that up to the public as an issue that used up almost all my time last week. So that's my response to what I was doing most of the week.
To encapsulate what a couple of the high points of my week last week was, number one, with the auditor's office and elections, there's a canvassing board, and the canvassing board convenes to oversee the balloting and the counting, and not so much right on the scene, but they certify, the board certifies the election and closes the election and such. And so with a seatmate of mine who is involved in this, I sat in as his alternate.
Okay, good.
Stunt double.
Oh, there you go.
And so that was very interesting to go through the training over the last month and a half or so. But last week, there was a statewide recount in several, for state elected offices. Certain counties were being petitioned to be recalled. Thurston County was one of the counties selected along with just a few precincts within this county. So I got to sit on that and authorize and certify and all this type of stuff, the opening of the ballots again, very tightly controlled and quality controlled. And then again on Monday, September 10th, yesterday, certify that the recount was done and done properly and close it. And I thought that was very, very interesting because the electoral process that we have in this country, and especially here locally, is pretty sacred to our democracy. So I'm very fortunate to be a part of that. And then last Thursday was the 3rd annual Harvest Celebration. It's also called the Seeds of Change at Juvenile Hall, where the kids that are either on probation or outside of probation, they come back and they started with a small, very small garden growing vegetables to a large garden, larger than this room, and they harvest this food and take it to the food bank. And just last week, they took just over 3,200 pounds of vegetables that they grew to the food bank. And for these kids that don't have much in their lives and have never seen the benefit of what they can do, benefit other people that are more needy than they themselves are, is a huge eye-opener for these young boys and girls. And to see them grow into 18, 21-year-olds that still want to come back and help because they see what good it does for other people is exceedingly heartwarming. So a couple months ago, I was given a tomato plant no bigger than this pinwheel. That's probably about maybe 2.5 feet high, and it's about 4.5 feet high now in my backyard, and has about 30 tomatoes on it. And I picked the first one yesterday that finally got ripened, and I didn't have it for lunch. I'm gonna have it for dinner. I love homegrown tomatoes. So that's very important to me that these kids thought enough to give a plant to someone else, and then to have it reproduce as well, because we used to do that as kids when my kids were kids. So that was the highlight of my week.
Cool beans. Well, we did a lot of different things, but I think one thing we should address is the fact that we're starting to what we call the budget season. It's normally around September, and it ends actually mid-December when you look at the totality of it. And I just offer up to anybody out there in the public to be a part of that. It's certainly, a lot of it is your tax-paying dollars. We do use grants and other ways to fund certain programs and services here, but it is all about making sure that dollar is turned for the better quality of service and to take care of those in mass, whatever that might be. And so I offer that up to you because there are a number of times when you have public input from now to I think about December 14th, and be a part of that. And we love hearing all sides of the story in terms of what needs to be funded, not funded. And some things are absolutely up for negotiation. Some things are kind of normal as they continue to be services, and but still there's input on the quality of it and sometimes the location of it or the duration of it. So there's all kinds of aspects of it. But just to let you know that we work diligently with a whole team of people that come in regularly when there's all published when we do this to make sure we put the right dollar at the right place at the right time and pay all the bills and keep those things going. And that's exactly where it's been for the last 3.5 years, and it'll be this way for the 4th year. So with me being here, so yeah.
Great.
And what do you have?
So I have your calendar for the coming week. Today, well, not immediately, at 3:30 today, you will convene as the Board of Health for the monthly Board of Health meeting. Tomorrow, Wednesday, September 12th, at 7:45, there is a Homes First, Heroes for Housing fundraising breakfast. At 11:15, the new employee orientation is in the HR training room in Building 4. At noon, you have a monthly meeting between the board and your appointed directors. At 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, you will have a work session on the draft 2019 through 2024 Transportation Improvement Program. And immediately after that at 2:30, the Public Works 2019-2024 Capital Facilities Plan, focusing on new, completed, and dropped projects. At 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, you'll have the Solid Waste Advisory Committee status report, and then at 3:30 tomorrow, the Shoreline Master Program update. And at 4:30, at Panorama will be a meeting of regional leaders and elected officials. So very full day tomorrow. On Thursday, you have no meetings scheduled. Friday morning at 9 o'clock is the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization, or TMBHO, agenda setting meeting here in this room. And no meetings scheduled for Monday. And next week, the acting county manager will be Martin Casey. So he'll be at the meeting next week with you.
Fantastic. Any final comments or questions?
Thank you.
No, thank you, Robin.
No, and none from me. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn the Board of County Commissioners meeting of September 11, 2018.
Second.
It's been moved and second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, and we are adjourned.